It's time for the Chapter and Chatter Cafe with Camden County Library District Director, Professor Jim Pasley. Exciting installment of the Chapter and Chatter Cafe. We are live from the Camden branch of the Camden County Library District, here to enlighten you with some useful information and also to let you know what's going around the region, going on around the region. I'm KB, alongside as always, the one, the only, Professor Jim Pasley. Good morning, sir.
Buddy, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
I had a chance yesterday to speak with Jim on a topic that well, we're going to be discussing this morning, and we kind of gave folks an opportunity to find out a little bit more about China and Taiwan. And interestingly enough, when we had our conversation yesterday on damradio.com, one of the things that you talked about, and you always seem to bring up, is when something happens here in the United States, we focus on it, and obviously with good reason, the recent assassination attempt on Donald Trump. But we also have the tendency to not focus on things that we should be really keeping an eye and an ear on because of how it is all going to play out in the future. And whomever gets the job of President of the United States is going to have a big task ahead in dealing with a country that we've been dealing with for quite some time that has done all kinds of things to not only get their foot in the door in the United States, but to interfere with the relations between places like the United States and, say, for example, Taiwan.
Yep.
So, with that being said, we're going to turn you loose this morning to talk about China and Taiwan. And then, as always, we'll take a little time to enlighten you, as I said, with some of the events going on around the Camden County area that involve all 6 of the Camden County libraries in the Camden County Library District. So,
you bet.
If you would like to jump into things here this morning and get us started,
all right.
I know people viewing in our live studio audience here would like to find out more.
Well, this is going to be an interesting little history lesson here for everybody. And what's amazing to me is it ties directly to everything we're seeing right now. I mean, history does repeat itself. And you and I have done a lot of shows together, and we're always sit back afterwards and think, wow, it's almost like you can see what's coming next. And so this issue with China and Taiwan has popped up. And the unfortunate thing is, like you said, a lot of people just, they're busy. You got a busy life going on, and there's so much going on in the world, and people have a tendency to not get all the information. And, that's one of the main reasons why I try and do these shows, is to try and just inform the public. And, I can't give you all of it, but I can certainly pique your interest. And, that's the nice thing about now, being the director of the library, I've got all these resources, and you folks do too. There's all kinds of information. We've pulled a whole bunch of books and information from our stacks here dealing with China and Taiwan. So I encourage you, if I pique your interest today, get to your local library. All 6 libraries have pulled information and give you a chance to do a little more research. So let's dive into this Taiwan thing, because everybody kind of scratches their head, and right off the bat, it's kind of like when we talked one time about the Soviet Union and Russia, and people would get them confused. Well, how about this? You've got the People's Republic of China, and you have the Republic of China. Wait, what? Right? Well, they couldn't be even further apart. The People's Republic of China, that is the communist side of it. Okay, that was founded with Mao Zedong and the whole bunch, all right? On the flip side of that, Taiwan refers to themselves as the Republic of China. So if a war ever broke out between the two of them, you're going to have the People's Republic of China fighting the Republic of China. And I can't wait to see the news media with that one. They're going to say it, and they're going to look off the stage and go, what did I just say?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, so, yeah, it gets a little confusing. So here we go. Let's start with a little history, and we're going to talk about a guy by the name of Chiang Kai-shek, all right? Now, of all things, Chiang Kai-shek was a Chinese military leader and a political leader who led something called the Kuomintang Party, all right, in China. Now, big picture, all right, prior to World War II breaking out, China was a mess, like most countries. And they had three major groups fighting one another. You had the old samurai class, you know, John Belushi, samurai delicatessen, right? You had
I don't quite think that was the direction
yeah,
they were going at the time.
Kind of
but
a little image, yeah.
sure,
You know,
I
right.
gotcha, I gotcha.
So you had the samurai class, which are these old warriors, and then you had Chiang Kai-shek, who wanted a form of socialism in the country, and then you had Mao Zedong, who's a communist, all right? And so you had all three groups fighting each other in a civil war. And this set the stage perfectly for Japan to come in and try and take over China. So while everybody's fighting internally, they're leaving themselves wide open to outside threats. Does that sound at all familiar?
Certainly does.
Right, you know. So here we go. Now, Chiang Kai-shek, he's sitting there saying, by gosh, I'm going to help the Chinese people. I'm going to get us all set up in this perfect socialist system. His dad was a merchant. At the age of 18, Chiang Kai-shek went off to the military academy. Now, he basically trained in Japan, of all places, for military service. He returned to China in 1911, took part in the uprising that overthrew the old Qing dynasty. Okay, so that's out the window. Now we've got the samurais, and we've got Chiang Kai-shek, and we've got Mao Zedong, all fighting, all right? Now, Chiang Kai-shek became a member of the Chinese Nationalist Party. And the way that happened is he had a brother-in-law named Sun Yat-sen who was heading this thing up. So brother-in-law says, hey, I could really use a military with my outfit. So bingo, there he is. He's working for his brother-in-law. Now, what happens is that this Kuomintang party comes along, and they promoted government-owned corporations. So it's socialism, but it's socialism light. It's not true socialism in that they just want part of the money-making part of the operation held in government hands, all right? And so what they did is they wanted government-owned corporations. Sun Yat-sen is influenced by a lot of economic ideas set forth by, of all things, an American by the name of Henry George. And Henry George, he had his own economic policy, and he said basically what we need is we need the rents that come from big monopolies and big corporations. We need to have them contribute, and that becomes part of the government-owned operations. In other words, have the government own big business. And then we'll distribute the wealth out amongst everybody else. Again, catching any similarities here? You know, we make the big government pay and then they hand out the money to everybody else. So that's basically, they called it Georgism. And that's basically what Sun Yat-sen and Chiang Kai-shek envisioned for the future of China. Now, he said the railroads, public utilities, canals, even the forests should all be nationalized. They should all be owned by the government. And then all the money that comes from those entities then goes into the kitty to take care of all the people. Sounded fair enough, right? Now, with the money in hand, the state can therefore finance all the social welfare programs. So take from the rich, give to the poor. Okay? Now, Chiang Kai-shek was appointed the commandant of the Chinese Military Academy in 1924, and there he built up his army. So after Sun Yat-sen passed away, Chiang Kai-shek became the leader of this Chinese party, the Kuomintang Nationalist Party. So he's in charge now of this group that wants this form of socialism. In the meantime, there's this guy over to the side, this Mao Zedong, who wants true communism. And folks, really, the difference between socialism and communism, I used to tell my students, is socialism happens over a long, slow period of time. Communism happens at the end of a barrel of a gun. They make it happen tomorrow. So when Chiang Kai-shek is saying we need to nationalize all these industries, they look to that to happen, you know, almost voluntarily. You know, we'll talk to the corporations, and slowly but surely they'll get on board with helping the country and all of that. But it spreads out over years. On the flip side of that, you got communists who are saying they're never going to do that. They're not going to give up what they've got. You're going to have to go in there with a gun and take it from them. So that's basically what the big difference was. At the turn of the 20th century, basically what they were saying was socialism and communism had the same end goals, but it's how you get there that was the difference, okay? And so here is Chiang Kai-shek. He's promoting his socialism idea there in China, okay? And basically in 1928, his army led the defeat, basically, of the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party, like I say, being the party of Mao Zedong. Now, basically, once he's in charge, Chiang Kai-shek there in China, he's trying to go about implementing his socialist program, okay? But he's still got all of these wingers out there. You've still got some of the old samurai guys, some of the Chinese communists are still out there, you know, fighting against the government. Now, from 1931 on, Chiang also had to contend with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria. Now, that's this northern part. If you can see right here, up in this corner here, that northern section right across from Japan, that's northern China. And they're very rich in minerals, not much in the way of agriculture, but it's a foothold for the Japanese. And again, the reason why the Japanese came in and took this was because their own, China at the time, they're all fighting one another. Okay, they're so busy worried about the old samurais and the communists and everything else that, you know, finally somebody looked over their shoulder and said, who are those guys? And here comes the Japanese, you know, and they swept in really almost with no effort at all and took over the northern part of China. Well, Chiang Kai-shek knows, oh my goodness, you know, this is going to be a big problem because the Japanese, the main reason that they're expanding is they have such a huge population. I mean, they're on that little island of theirs stacked like cordwood. They just don't have space. And so naturally, they're wanting to expand to gain more territory, and this was a perfect place to take. Okay? So bear in mind, this is happening before the outbreak of World War II. So there's all these conflicts actually taking place in that part of the world before World War II even broke out. Okay? So when we get involved in this thing and wind up in the Pacific, we're stepping into a heck of a mess. It's already been going on for 15 years.
Right.
Yeah, okay? So basically what happens is when in 1937, Japan decides to launch a full-scale war to take all of China. They're going to swoop in from this northern area and start pushing into the whole interior part of China itself. And when that happens, now all of a sudden, China is raising their hand and saying, hello, help us over here, we've got a problem. And so the whole world is watching what's happening, all right? Now, what happens is that China becomes one of our allies in World War II. Now, think about that, okay? Right now, they are one of our greatest rivals, China is. They have an economy that's even bigger than ours right now, and they're a real threat. But just what, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, they were our ally. So you can see how quickly things can change. You go from having an ally in World War II to an adversary now in 2024. Pretty amazing when you think about it. Now, basically what happens is Chiang Kai-shek finds himself fighting the Japanese now, along with all the other internal enemies that he has. And basically we saw that he's in a position where he's going to need some help. And so what he does is he actually travels to Cairo, Egypt. And there he meets with FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill. And he's warning him. He's saying, guys, there's a real mess happening back at my house. And, you know, I know you're dealing with this Hitler and Mussolini guys, but I'm telling you, this is not a good situation here, and it's eventually going to come home to roost on you all. So basically what happens is, like I say, we're going to be supplying Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang Party, who are pushing for socialism. We're supplying them with all the arms they need to help fight against the Japanese. You know, I mean, bottom line is that we felt like we could, Chiang Kai-shek would be and his party would be a lot less of a problem than having the Japanese come in and take over all of China. And so we are supplying arms to the Chinese in World War II. Okay? Now, like I say, this history plays a big role right now when we're looking at, okay, now China is wanting to take over Taiwan. So it's kind of a confusing mess when you start looking at where we were and where we are today. And like I say, the problem is that in 1949, the communists are successful. While all this fighting's going on previously with the Japanese, it weakened Chiang Kai-shek, and the communists come in and they defeated Chiang Kai-shek and his party. And this is Mao Zedong and his army. Well, what happens is that Chiang Kai-shek is being forced out of China. So he flees with his party and all of his people, and where does he go? To the island of Formosa. We know it as Taiwan, okay? And this is where, like I say, you know, I can't wait for the news media when something finally happens, they got to step back. We have Chiang Kai-shek, who used to be our ally, who gets defeated by Mao Zedong in China. He flees to Taiwan and he forms the Republic of China. He was defeated by the People's Republic of China. Okay? So that's the two groups you have now. So you can see when we talk about China threatening to take over Taiwan, what's happening here is that Mao Zedong defeated Chiang Kai-shek and thought he had him beat, only to have him flee out to this little island. So the Chinese Communist Party says Taiwan is ours. It never was, never did belong to Chiang Kai-shek. He just fled there after the war. Well, of course, Chiang Kai-shek is saying, I'm the last bastion of hope to keep the communists from taking over this whole area. Make sense? Okay? So now, Chiang Kai-shek and the remaining Kuomintang forces, they get out to the island of Taiwan, and there Chiang Kai-shek establishes a government in exile. And he led it for 25 years, okay? So you have these former folks that were in China, now in Taiwan, trying to maintain control of the country, and we have the communists who've taken over all the rest of China saying no, all right? Now, this government that Chiang Kai-shek set up continued to be recognized by many countries. Bear in mind, Chiang was our buddy in World War II. So the United States is recognizing Chiang Kai-shek and his rogue group that have gone out to Taiwan, all right? Now, basically, Chiang Kai-shek, he's out there ruling this thing just like it's China proper, okay? And this, basically what happens is Taiwan is recognized by the United Nations, okay? So the United Nations is saying, yes, that is China, that little island, not this great big thing that was taken over by the communists. Well, that didn't set very well with the communists, to say the least. But what we see happen is that the United Nations is going to turn around and recognize Taiwan and Chiang Kai-shek as China proper, and they're going to do that all the way to the end of Chiang Kai-shek's life, and when he died in 1975. 1975. So the world basically is recognizing Taiwan as being China until Chiang Kai-shek passes away. Now, we all know that Taiwan is this little bitty island off the coast of China proper, okay? And like I say, they regard Taiwan as just a rebel region, okay? That eventually it's all going to come back to China proper, okay? Now, when the Korean War breaks out in that same area there in 1950, the United States is seeking to prevent the further expansion of China. So this is where the United States steps in and says, even though we've got this war going on in Korea, Mao Zedong and the boys do not mess with Taiwan. For one thing, we didn't want them to have a base there. And so we send all of our ships and everything over to protect Taiwan during the Korean War. That's where we really get involved in this whole conflict, all right? So we're playing Big Brother to protect them. You know, now there's nothing really written saying that's what we're supposed to do, but that's the decision that was made. Now, Chiang Kai-shek promised to fight and continue the fight against the Chinese until he can gain his independence. And in 1954, China actually attacked Taiwan. And when they did that, the U.S. stepped in and signed something called a Mutual Defense Treaty. And here again, this happened in the past, and this is where we are today. These things that were signed back in 1954 are now somebody's blow the dust off of it and say, hey, it says here we're supposed to be protecting these guys, you know? And so that's why we're involved in this mess. Now, when a second military crisis started on the offshore islands just off of Taiwan in 1958, the United States was led almost to the brink of a war with China then. China proper, the communist Chinese. Now, what happened was Washington the feds here forced Chiang Kai-shek to officially abandon his policy of fighting against the Chinese. So just live on the island, don't make any waves, and that's kind of where we sat down together. We just kind of said, leave everything the way it is, put a freeze on it. Now, in 1972, what happened was Taiwan formally lost its seat with the United Nations. Okay, and now the United States recognized the People's Republic of China as the Chinese. So Taiwan kind of lost its status on the world stage. Now the United Nations, when they call up the Chinese, they're calling up the party of Mao Zedong. Now it's Xi Jinping, okay? In 1979, the United States is sitting there looking at this, and they switched their diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China. In other words, we're going to have our ambassadors now say, when we're talking about China now, we're talking about the People's Republic of China, the Communist Party, and not Taiwan. So we kind of turned our backs on Taiwan a little bit. Now Taiwan is sitting there saying, dudes, you know, you're leaving us out to dry out here.
They say dudes?
Yeah, in Chinese. We didn't understand it, but it was dudes.
Oh, dudes.
Yeah, dudes, you know.
Dudes.
Yeah, I don't know what the Chinese word for dudes is, but that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
Dudes.
Right. Yeah, dudes. You know, so here they are. They're sitting on this little island thinking everybody's abandoning us. We're stranded here, and nobody's going to help us. Well, Congress is looking at this. You know, our Congress. And our Congress sits there and says, you know, they're right. We can't just leave them twisting in the breeze here. We can't let China continue to expand. So in 1979, Congress passes the Taiwan Relations Act. Now, this is one of those things that kind of passes through Congress and nobody ever pays attention.
No.
You know, it's like, well, that's nice, you know, we have relations. No, what it did is in the fine print on this thing, it says that the United States will commit to help Taiwan defend itself from attack by the Chinese. That was signed in 1979. And so now when you see the saber rattling and China threatening to take Taiwan back, there again blew off the dust on another old document, came back and said, hey, what about this thing here? It says that you guys will come and help us. So that's what's got us committed to helping with this whole mess, okay?
Let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
Did the United States realize at the time the unenviable task that they had kind of wrangled themselves into, saying that if indeed China makes a move on Taiwan, that we will intervene at some point, and obviously it would be something done militarily.
Right.
Which normally when we see the United States get involved, certainly in regions like Asia and the Middle East, you start bringing in the Navy, setting up blockades. And it's more, you know, I can't use the words that I want to use to describe it. Mm-hmm. We could off camera.
Right.
But it's that little match that goes back and forth. First you do something, then we're going to do something. And you don't necessarily make an aggressive move, but you kind of just keep pushing the issue and forcing the issue, almost forcing someone's hand as you would when you're playing cards in order to make them do something that is really just going to pop the cork on the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Did the United States have any real idea where China sat militarily, that if indeed there was some sort of a skirmish, some sort of a conflict, something happened, that the United States could do something, because I mean, we're talking about a country the size of China with millions and millions of people, and then we're not anywhere near a home base or a home port or things like that. And if the Chinese started throwing things at us, we would pretty much be up the creek without a paddle.
And again, KB, you're spot on in that, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, with what you had to take into consideration is in 1979, if you looked at China's economy, you'd think, China makes all the little trinkets and toys, and everything they made was junk, right? Now, jump ahead to where we are now, I don't think there's a chance in the world that we would have signed something like this, because they're a powerhouse now. Their military, like you say, they've got 1 billion people. Their military is huge. They've been investing almost 75% of their income that they're making off of us, buying all their stuff, into their military. So as we've been shrinking our military, they've been increasing theirs. They're building these islands and these bases all over. They've created a worldwide tie to the economy, to where it's not just China proper. Now you're looking at their allies, the Russians. They're looking at their allies, the Iranians. You're looking at all the holdings that they now have in Africa, South America, really here in America. And therein lies the problem. In 1979, that wasn't that big of a threat. But now, with the resources they have, it's a huge threat.
And you touched on something else that I was going to ask you about, and that would have been China's allies at that particular time. And Russia being one of the more important allies to the Chinese. Of course, you talk about Iran. But in all honesty, I mean, here we go again, watching Russia sitting on the sidelines. At what point do they get involved? At what point do they just maybe offer some advice? Could they give the Chinese some weapons, some technology that would certainly help them out? And this always seems to be the breakdown when there's a crisis somewhere in the world, and we start kind of breaking it down by sides. The United States and their allies, in this case China and their allies, and one of their allies being Russia. And at that time, of course, the nuclear weapons were something that were sitting there.
It changes the whole ballgame.
And somebody had their finger on the button, so to speak. So.
Right. Yeah, and again, you are a real problem for me in that you bring up things that lead me down these other paths. But
I'm sorry.
Real quick.
I apologize.
No, real quick, and it's a great point. Is that this Korean War that we were talking about? What happened is that the communists had pushed down into Korea, and they basically get into this conflict where the United States comes in because we don't want to see the communists expand and take over Korea. So here we come, MacArthur and the boys, and we come pushing in from the south. Where we screwed up is we just wanted to push them out of the southern part of Korea. Instead, MacArthur pushed all the way up through North Korea, all the way into Russian territory, all right, and into Chinese territory. And what happens is the Chinese forces are there pushing our forces back down, and Russia is watching all this and saying, no. And Russia now starts backing China at that point, giving them all the arms and everything they need to push back down, and it all settled on this 38th parallel that gives us North and South Korea, okay? But in essence, what we had is we had everything paired up right there. If somebody had been paying attention, to the north we had North Korea, Russia, and China all become thicker than thieves. And to the south you have the United Nations. It was a UN force that went in there, which dragged the United States into it. So if you could have stepped back at the end of that and said, uh-oh, look what we've done. That's where that alliance started, and now we're up to our ears in it. So absolutely, and again, a lot of the, armies run on resources. The bottom line is Japan expanded because they needed resources. China has 1 billion people and a huge industry worldwide. They need things like oil and rubber and iron, all these different things. Well, their idea is just to expand worldwide and take it. get involved with it. And so there you had it, okay? So in essence, where we are today is we're sitting here dealing with an issue that has been simmering all the way from the period before World War II. You know, this is where this whole Taiwan-China thing started. And, you know, it gets very, very convoluted as you get to this stage. You know, now you sprinkle in billions of dollars in economy. Our dependence on China for things like, you know, chips and, well, like I say, at Christmas, look under your Christmas tree and find me something that's not made in China. We've done it basically to ourselves. You know, a lot of people said China will never have to fire a shot, they'll just repossess us, you know. I mean, it really is.
Well, the way they're buying up land.
Yes.
And farms.
Yes. Meat processing.
A lot of that.
Yeah.
A whole lot of that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I think is most concerning about this, certainly with China and Taiwan. But you look at what the Chinese are doing, and the city of Detroit is a good example. The city of Detroit has gone through periods of, you know, of being on top, and then the economy has dropped out of it when the big three, the automakers, have had issues. Of course, it reverberates through Detroit like crazy. So there is a city that's essentially been bought up. A lot of it has been bought up by the Chinese.
Yeah.
And they're doing some pretty incredible things, and people that live there, people that are a part of the city and have been for years, are watching all of these new developments and saying, you know what, this really isn't that bad. So now you've got the Chinese able not only to buy up chunks of the United States, but convince the people that what they're doing isn't really that bad. In you know, a mindset of sorts, trying to allow them to think that, hey, we're extending the olive branch. You know, we're going to come in, we're going to buy things up, we're going to prop it up, we're going to make it look good, we're going to make it useful. But then again, somewhere in the back, there's that guy that's ready to flip the switch.
Right, and boy, you're dead on there, and that's what they're really doing worldwide. Is they're going to these third world places and saying, how would you like to have a big modern port? And they come in and they build it for them, and they're thinking, well, this would have never happened under our current regime.
Right.
Maybe they're not so bad, you know.
Exactly.
And so we're seeing that happen everywhere.
Psychologically, they're convincing them
Right.
that this is something that's going to be huge, something that's going to be great. It's almost like there was a TV show on some years ago when the aliens came to Earth, and the aliens had come down in a peaceful manner, and they extended the olive branch to the humans, and they said, we're going to come in, we're going to give you all this technology, we're going to do all these wonderful things for you. But behind the scenes, they were actually using humans because they fed off of the human. And so,
there you go. Yeah.
Not necessarily saying that the Chinese are going to be eating anybody, but at the same time, that's kind of the mindset.
It is.
You know, you just roll out the red carpet, and then when you get to the point where you want, you roll it up, flip the switch.
Right. You're living in a grass hut, and somebody's bringing you, you know, beautiful home and everything you could ever want. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, I found kind of an interesting article in that what would happen if China decided to pull the trigger, okay? And this is really, to me, something that's important right now because, you know, turn on the news this morning and you're seeing, you know, with the assassination attempt and all, they're saying China and Russia are watching this. They're watching us, and they're saying a 20-year-old kid can get on a roof and take a shot at this guy. What kind of leadership do we have going on there? What in the world is happening there in America? And so I found an article that talked about what happens if and when the Chinese Communist Party decides to take Taiwan. Personally, if I was China, now would be the time to do it. I mean, really, we're stretched thin with Ukraine, with Israel and Hamas, and this was a huge issue in World War II, fighting a two-front war. Right now, if you were going to do something, it would be the time to do it. I hate to say that, but it's a big concern, and I'm hoping that our military commanders are paying attention to what China is doing, all right? Now, basically, China, like I say, they're doing everything they can to threaten Taiwan on a regular basis. They're flying planes over it all the time. They've got ships patrolling up and down through the straits there between China and Taiwan. I mean, it's a big question. What would happen? So if and when this war was to come, will the Chinese Communist Party try to keep the conflict confined to just Taiwan, just this little island? Or are they going to look at it and say, we know if we do this, we're going to be threatened by the United States and all the allies in NATO, the whole thing? Again, it's the same scenario. Same thing happened with Korea. The same thing is going to play out again, all right? So that's the big question. Is China going to look at who else is allied with Taiwan? Or are they, going to just take Taiwan and leave that alone? That's a big question.
And interestingly enough, when we talk about China coming in and trying to psychologically get people to buy into what they're doing, let's look at some of the U.S. allies. Would they be as willing to get involved in a full-blown conflict
Bingo.
as, let's say, and I'm just using this as an example, let's say France, for example. Maybe they have a lot of their own internal problems, or any of these countries that are U.S. allies. They don't have the time, they don't have the resources necessary to devote to something like this.
Right.
And so then the United States is finding itself maybe even more and more losing allies, losing strength, losing support, and it's certainly going to make things a lot easier for the Chinese. Or do the Chinese reach out to various allies that are supposed to be backing the United States and offer them money, offer them products, offer them technology, and make this seem so much more less aggressive, and try to do it, in a sit-down kind of a mode where, as you said earlier, maybe a shot won't even be fired.
Right, and gosh, KB, you're just so dead on with this, in that talking about, and this has happened in the past, this is something that we had a huge issue with in World War II when we were fighting Hitler and Mussolini, trying to convince our allies that, okay, even though we've defeated Hitler and Mussolini, we still got this whole mess over here with the Japanese, who have taken over the whole Pacific. How do you convince a country like France or England to engage in another? They've just been devastated. I mean, there's ruins everywhere from World War II in Europe, and now we got to convince these people to come half a world away and supply troops and munitions and money to defeat the Japanese. They're going to ask the question, what's in it for me? And that's, you're spot on there. And I think that's going to be the big issue, is can we count on our allies? If China makes this move to take Taiwan, can we count on our allies to step up and say, you bet, we're going to help you? What's in it for them? Now, one of the big issues that they have is the same one we have. Just like we're dependent on China for all sorts of products and services, so is Europe. And so, do you want to make an enemy out of somebody that's supplying you with all your computer chips, all your technology? This is a big issue. Do we want China as an enemy? Is what a lot of them are going to ask themselves. Now, it's funny because, like you said, we tie back to what happened in World War II. You can see history repeat itself. In World War II, what happened was we basically, let's go to the First World War. Imperial Germany made the decision to invade France through Belgium, okay? And basically, this was all triggered by, of all things, an assassination. Yes, one guy. You got the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, gets shot. Now, what happened is because he is shot, now all of a sudden you got Germany comes in and backs Austria. You have France comes in and backs the Serbs. Or it's just this whole alliance system. What we see is that in a matter of 2 weeks' time, there's over 40 declarations of war. It was the alliances that caused World War I. I mean, one guy gets shot, and the next thing you know, everybody, Russia comes in, all of them, and they're mobilizing troops because of one incident. So it's a powder keg, and we're seeing that again today, the exact same scenario. Now, basically what happened is the Germans decided, which this ties somewhat to where I'm at today, if China decides to take Taiwan, their biggest threat is going to be us. Okay? Well, the Germans saw the same thing in World War II, where they said, okay, or World War I, if we're going to turn around and try and take out France, France was the biggest threat because they had a 1 million-man army. So Germany said, to heck with going down there into Serbia and that whole area down there where the conflict actually was. First thing we need to do is get rid of the Allies that'll come to their aid. And so they went after France, and that's where they came sweeping from Germany through Belgium and into France. So the conflict's actually way down here in Bosnia and Serbia, but in order to deflect the problem, they said, we got to take care of the biggest threat, okay? And that's what I'm concerned about with the whole Chinese-Taiwan thing. Will China go after us because they're afraid that we'll step into the conflict, all right? Now, basically, this whole thing started with this assassination attempt on Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June of 2014. And like I say, Germany declared war on Russia because Russia was a threat to Germany. So it's just a domino effect, and we're setting ourselves up for this exact same thing again, all right? So China, if we go forward and let's say China decides to take Taiwan, China will likely have to assume that both the United States and Japan will act to prevent Taiwan's conquest. Bear in mind, we've got that old document, that we signed in '79 saying that we'd help. So we're telling them, if you mess with them, if you mess with Taiwan, we're going to jump into this. So naturally, China's biggest threat is going to be us. So they're going to have to come after us to get us out of the way if they want to keep Taiwan. Make sense?
Absolutely.
All right. So what we see happen is there's parallels to what happened back in World War II. Nazi-led Germany's attack on Poland. Basically what they did when they went in and took Poland, and everybody's saying, don't you do that. Don't you dare go in there and do that, Hitler. Don't do it. And he did it anyhow. Said, all right, let's just see what happens. And bingo, there they all jumped in. That was the straw to break the camel's back. When Hitler attacked Poland, now France enters the war, England enters into the war, the United States is in it. It all escalates like that. And that's the powder keg that we're sitting on right now. Now, bear in mind, when this all started, what allowed Hitler to go in and take Poland, his biggest threat was Russia. Yeah, my God, they get gazillions of those guys walking around over there drinking vodka and shooting guns. We don't want to mess with these guys. And so what he does, he goes to Stalin, Hitler does it, says, hey, dude. Again, dude, but this time it was in German, okay? And he says, hey, he said, I'll cut a deal with you. If I take Poland, I'll split it with you. And Stalin goes, what? Well, I'll give you half of it. Done. And they signed a non-aggression pact, and that opened up the door, and that allowed Hitler to take Poland. And so now, bingo, the war is on, okay? So, again, your point that you brought up earlier, of our allies, what if China turns around and says, hey, France, England, how about we give you free computer chips for the next 10 years? Or we give you access to this and that and whatever if you stay out of this Taiwan conflict.
Frozen custard.
Frozen custard, all you can eat.
All you can eat frozen custard.
Yes, so, I mean, that's the way these things work. Even though there's an alliance right now, the alliance can change, okay? And so that's something we really have to think about. Now, in essence, if this whole thing blows up like that, is China going to strike a deal with, say, Japan or India, even the United States? Maybe the United States will turn around and say, yeah, you're right, we don't want to get involved in this thing. And let them have it. What do we care? It's not worth killing a couple of million people. Let's just go ahead and let them have Taiwan. It's an appeasement, right? So you don't know, and that's why it's so important as to, what our leadership thinks. Now, it brings us all the way full circle back to Imperial Japan's decision to attack the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. Japan knew that if they want to expand in World War II, their biggest threat was our Navy. And so they took out our Navy first. That's what they did. I mean, it's a matter of taking out your future opposition. And boy, it worked.
Certainly does away with any opportunity for them to set up a blockade.
Exactly. So you can see history does repeat itself. Now, just like with Japan in 1941, China has to secure the seas around this whole area. The Pacific is, just a gazillion islands. We learned that in World War II, okay? And the sole difference in this whole historical comparison is the fact that Japan was in a situation where they needed to do something fast. They had to strike fast, they had to hit us quick, they had to surprise us, and they needed to gain as much ground as they could and hold it. In this case, China has been sitting back for, 79 till now, 40 years. They've been sitting back saying, building up their military, just taking their jolly old time. Taiwan's not going anywhere, it's right there, and it's just a matter of when they want to pull the trigger. And so that becomes a huge issue for us. Now, again, you have the economy playing into it as well. They can use the almighty dollar to gain access to what they need and to gain alliances, okay? So if China decides to take Taiwan, it might simply wait until there's a substantial advantage. They're watching what's going on in the world, like what's happening with us right now. And that's why I say we have to be careful what we say on the world stage and what we do with our alliances with other countries, because any sign of weakness between us or breaking apart our alliances is an opportunity for China to say, now's the time. We know that these guys aren't going to be able to come in and help.
No, they're buying up the country.
Yes.
And everything in it.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily going to make any difference who they have on their side when they can basically come in and say, we own this, and we own this, and
right.
we own this, and we own this. Plus, as you alluded to earlier about the fact that China used to make a lot of products very cheaply, they now provide us with all sorts of things technologically that we depend on.
Right.
And so let's say we put some sanctions in place.
Yeah.
China's like, we're fine with that.
Yeah.
We're going to pull the plug on this and this and this and this. And oh my God, all the people that would just go crazy without their phones and their laptops and everything else. So.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my wife the other day. She was in the medical field. We get most of our medicine comes from China. So there you go. Well, we'll just cut off all your antibiotics. Oh boy, So it goes even beyond the technology. It goes into things that are staples that we absolutely have to have that we've decided to outsource to a country that could potentially be a future huge enemy.
Which is interesting in the grand scheme of things when we look at the relationship that the United States and China have, let's say militarily. There is no relationship, but the two powers going up against each other, while at the same time, China, as you mentioned, is doing so much internally in the United States. There may be that opportunity once again to take what they want to take without firing a shot.
Right.
That is just so epic that you use that that term because it's so very true.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. When in closing this out, one of the things you have to think about too is this time factor. Understand that Xi Jinping is 68 years old. He wants Taiwan. He wants that to be his legacy. So if he's going to do this, he's running out of time himself. And so it's high on his list to make it happen before he dies or is out of office, okay? And he's very ambitious. He wants this to happen. Second, every year that passes, we see the Taiwanese people are more and more identifying as being Taiwanese, not Chinese. They're developing their own culture ever since they've moved there. They're developing their own culture and foregoing their traditional Chinese culture and be creating their own culture, because Taiwan is very progressive. They make a lot of chips. They've been exposed to the West. You know, what is it they say? You know, once they've been to the big city, you can't get them back down on the farm, and that's basically what's happening here. And that's really torquing Xi Jinping. He's like, oh my God, you go over there, they're all wearing blue jeans and, you know, listening to, you know, all this crazy music the Americans listen to. That, yeah, it's not good. So that's another pressure to try and get it done. And then, you know, you have things that happen like our massive loss in Afghanistan. That sent a pretty poor message, you know, again. So basically, if Taiwan and Japan and the United States, it'll be another Pearl Harbor kind of thing. They'll hit them all at one time, if it happens, okay? And it'll include things like missile strikes on Guam and Hawaii, Okinawa, the Japanese home islands, and probably for us, because of the distances, the way they're probably going to come at us was with cyber attacks. We've already seen it. You know, I mean, all they got to do is hack in, cripple our electronics, and we're in a big problem, okay? So China's intent, they have four main things. First, they're going to preempt forces that could help Taiwan. That's number one on their list. We got to get rid of the threat from the other countries, okay? We need to demoralize our foreign adversaries. We need them to sue for peace and set the stage for China to create their empire worldwide. Now, will history repeat itself? We shall see, but you can see now why it's so important that you pay attention when you're watching the evening news when they talk about China and Taiwan, because this is a huge, huge problem.
And unfortunately, though, most people don't understand it from the point of view that we have shared with folks today, and that is the more important part of it is the actual history. And as you had said earlier, all of the information that we've discussed here, or you've discussed, is in the books that are available at
right
all
here.
6 branches
Yes.
of the Camden County Library District. So with that being said, let's hope that folks in this country wake up, because I think there would certainly be a number of things that will affect us down the road. And I have to say it one more time. It could be something that happens without firing a shot.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
possible.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the events that are coming up with the Camden County Library District. You have witnessed and seen a lot of the things over the summer reading program that's still going on. But there are a lot of things that people can continue to utilize even when the kids are out of school. Bring them by and let them take an opportunity to check out all the great facilities that are available and the resources they have available. You know, we talk about something that's been designed with public libraries in mind, the Master File Premier from the EBS EBSCO. I wasn't going to do it that way. I was just going to, because I figured I'd screw it up. The EBSCO host, providing a robust collection of full text articles found in general reference magazines, which will allow you to maybe do some more research of their publications. They cover a wide range of subject areas, including business, health, education, general science, and multicultural issues. You might want to start maybe brushing up on your Chinese a little bit. It also includes
how to say dude.
How to be dude. When they show up at your house, you just open the door and go, dude. Or when they shut off your cell phone, you call them up and say, dude. Can you turn on my cell phone? It also includes an extensive image collection of more than 2 million photos, maps, and flags. So you're going to learn a lot from this particular facility, or this particular resource, this publication, and allow yourself to learn more and be a little bit more in-depth with everything that Professor Pasley has discussed here. You can use Master File Premier today to dive deeper into the topic, as we said, of China and Taiwan. Search keywords like Taiwan, China, Chinese Republic, 1912 to 1949, or Chiang Kai-shek, 1887 to 1975. So, again, one of those great resources available at all 6 branches of the Camden County Library District. And all you have to do, if you're not clear about how it works, is to stop in and to talk to these folks. And all of the folks that run these various facilities will do an excellent job of helping you out. Now, we switch from what's going on in China and Taiwan and the United States is something I think that's very enjoyable, especially for kids of all ages. Navigating the wild, well, it's no easy feat, but Jamie with the Dickerson Park Zoo, based out of Springfield, along with some of her animal friends from the zoo, will demonstrate how their unique characteristics help them survive in the world. That may not be a bad idea, brushing up on your survival skills as well.
Yep.
And you can learn a lot from animals. Jamie will be at the Camdenton Library right here on Tuesday, July 23rd at 2 p.m. and the Climax Springs Library on Wednesday, July 31st at 10:30 a.m. So some opportunities to see how animals have adapted over the years, what types of mechanisms that they have in place to defend themselves, to attract a mate, to camouflage themselves. Animals are very interesting, to say the least, and there are a lot of things that we can learn from them. From sustaining flight to creating light, you can join the folks right here, their friends from Mad Science, and go on a journey that explores the superpowers of, here we go, Biblio, the superhero. Was I close?
Very good.
Biblio, the superhero. Got to do a lot of that stuff on the fly with pronunciation, and you just hope you get it right. Climax Springs and Osage Beach Libraries. Did I just say libraries?
Library.
I would not be, now if I would have said that when I was in grade school, can I go to the library? The teacher would say, no, not until you know how to pronounce it properly. Library. Climax Springs and Osage Beach Libraries at 10:30 and the Sunrise Beach Community Center at 1:30 in the afternoon. How about the Max Creek Library is going to be the place to be Wednesday, July 24th at 10:30 for a fun morning of tie-dye. Now, I know a little something about tie-dye because I have a young lady that I know very well who is into tie-dye. And, you know, tie-dye is something very expressive, and how you do it and how you create it is amazing. And all of the work and all of the things that go into making a shirt, for example, you would be surprised, and the end result is going to blow you away. Be sure to bring your own t-shirts, socks, aprons, or whatever you think needs to be tie-dyed, and they will provide the dye and the rubber bands. And what's interesting about tie-dye is if you have something that belongs to somebody else, but you think it would be cool if it was tie-dyed, definitely ask them first. Take it from somebody who knows. Ask them first. That's going to be on Wednesday, July the 24th at 10:30 a.m. at the Max Creek branch of the Camden County Library District. Also, local author Jamie Graham is going to be at the Osage Beach Library on Thursday, July 25th at 1 p.m. for a special reading of his latest book, Home is Where the Heart Is. Jamie has spent more than a little bit of his life in the central Missouri area, and he's called the Lake of the Ozarks home since 2001. I believe we've talked about Jamie before, a very unique individual, born with a hearing problem, leaving him with a speech disorder, but he hasn't let his disabilities get in the way. He's learned to use his talent as an artist and storyteller to share his feelings with others, which is important. What started as a hobby for Jamie has turned into a promising career, and he is known for his cartoon-style illustrations for Special Olympics, and you can find his name in the Special Olympics Hall of Fame as what he has done, his service to individuals with disabilities, and his achievements. Home is Where the Heart Is Jamie's fourth published book, and is a reflection of memoir of Jamie's life here at the Lake of the Ozarks. He is excited and looking to share his latest book with others near and far. And copies will be available to purchase when he is here, or actually at the Osage Beach Library on Thursday, July 25th at 1 p.m. Starting Thursday, July 25th at 1:30, the Camdenton Library will host a bi-weekly sensory story time for adults. This is a very unique opportunity. Sensory story times focus on providing stories, songs, and activities that are specifically designed for adults with autism spectrum disorder, sensory integration issues, and other developmental and physical difficulties. Parents and caregivers are encouraged to participate. Finally, let's get this one in. They invite you to join them for a fun evening of transforming thrift shop art. into altered art masterpieces at the Osage Beach Library on Friday, July 26th at 6:30. Registration for the event is appreciated and can be done by calling the Osage Beach Library at 573-348-3282.
Check this out.
Yeah.
I love this.
Oh, Mona
this
Lisa's holding my cat.
This is such a fun program, and I've been perusing some of the things people have done. Absolutely hilarious. You go to a thrift shop and just buy an old picture, and then insert what you want into it. And the creativity, it's terrific.
You could insert yourself.
Well, yeah.
Standing next to Mona Lisa.
I
was there.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Or put yourself in the background somewhere.
That's right.
Don't necessarily put yourself up front.
I think that's going to be a really fun one, too.
Folks, we're just about ready to wrap it up, and we want to let you know that you can find all of these events and more in the latest edition of the quarterly magazine, Between the Pages, and you can do that today. We thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our supporters, SRG Financial Advisors and Lake TV. Thanks to our great technicians that have kept us rolling throughout this hour. And we're back. When are we back again? In August we'll be back on the, caught them off guard there. It'll be sometime in August, and we'll let you know. And the easiest way to find out more is to go to the website ccld.us. August 15th.
And I'm thinking maybe we'll do something on the 1904 World's Fair and Olympics.
You know what? I think it's about time to, give them a little run for their money, so to speak.
This is going to be a fun one, too.
Professor Pasley, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for your opportunity. Thank you for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time as always. And we look forward to seeing you August the 15th right back here at the Camdenton branch of the Camden County Library District. We want to thank all of the folks with the other 5 libraries as well. Make sure you check them out. Take the opportunity to get the resources necessary to come up with your own thoughts, your own knowledge, and your own ideas. Form your own opinions, folks, because letting other people do it, that's just not right. God bless, folks. We'll talk to you again next time. Thanks so much for being a part of the program, and we'll see you in August.